Gemini, the third sign of the zodiac, is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, thought, and curiosity. Gemini is a sign of movement, connection, and exploration. It lives in the realm of ideas and delights in the exchange of thoughts, words, and symbols. As an air sign, Gemini moves lightly through the world, absorbing impressions and weaving them into patterns of understanding. Where Aries initiates and Taurus stabilizes, Gemini divides, disseminates, and diversifies. It's the first sign to truly operate in the mind, not to control the material world, but to interpret it. Gemini does not seek permanence or depth in the traditional sense. Instead, it is interested in range, flexibility, and access to all perspectives. But Gemini is more than just chatter or cleverness. It's the sign of duality, of paradox, of contradiction. Its symbol, the twins, reminds us that Gemini is always living in two worlds at once, the spoken and unspoken, the real and imagined, the rational and irrational. At its best, Gemini is the storyteller, the translator, the thinker who can hold two truths at once. At its most challenged, it may become scattered, uncommitted, or lost in endless distraction. Gemini is often misunderstood as shallow, inconsistent, or fickle, but these are only shadows of a much more nuanced personality. Gemini's core is defined not by instability, but by mental fluidity. The Gemini soul is wired to move, to compare, to explore the world through contrast. And this makes them endlessly curious, playful, and intellectually alive. The heart of Gemini. At its center, Gemini is driven by a need to understand. This may manifest as an interest in people, languages, books, puzzles, or even gossip, anything that reflects how humans express and relate to the world. Geminis are gifted communicators, not just because they talk well, but because they have a natural ability to translate experiences into language. They want to take what is inside and make it accessible to the outside. Geminis tend to be witty, sharp, and observant. They see what others miss, and they can shift gears effortlessly in conversation or thought. Their minds are always working, often jumping from one idea to the next before the first is finished. For some, this can be overwhelming, but for Gemini, it's how they breathe. Duality and adaptability. As a mutable sign, Gemini is adaptable and responsive, able to adjust to new environments or perspectives with ease. This makes them incredibly versatile. They can fit into many different roles or social settings, often mirroring the energy around them. This flexibility is one of Gemini's greatest strengths, but also one of its great challenges. Because Gemini can see both sides of nearly any situation, decision-making can be difficult. They may struggle with commitment, not because they lack loyalty, but because they fear missing out on another version of reality. Gemini wants to keep all doors open, and this can lead to restlessness, indecision, or superficial connections if not consciously managed. Cleverness and humor. Gemini is naturally funny. Their humor tends to be quick, dry, and intelligent, often laced with irony or insight. They use humor as a way to process complexity, to deflect discomfort, or simply to play with ideas. A well-developed Gemini mind is like a kaleidoscope, constantly shifting, but always beautiful in motion. However, this lightness can also be mistaken for lack of depth. But Gemini's depth lies in its breadth, in the connections it draws between seemingly unrelated things. The sign has an innate genius for making the abstract real and the complex simple. In relationships, Gemini brings a sense of aliveness, stimulation, and curiosity. They are drawn to people who can engage them intellectually, who can surprise them, challenge them, or teach them something new. Gemini doesn't fall in love with appearances, they fall in love with minds. The need for mental connection. Gemini needs conversation the way other signs need touch or security. They want a partner who can talk, not just small talk, but deep, winding, unpredictable, mental exploration. For Gemini, talking is a form of intimacy. If you can make them laugh, think, and wonder, you're halfway to their heart. However, emotional intimacy doesn't always come easily. Gemini can intellectualize their feelings or avoid uncomfortable emotions by shifting focus. It's not that they don't feel, they do. But they often experience emotion as something to understand rather than something to sit with. Learning to stay present in emotional vulnerability is one of Gemini's deepest lessons in love. Freedom and flexibility. Gemini needs freedom, not just physical space, but psychological freedom to evolve, to change, and to express themselves fully. Partners who are rigid or overly controlling may stifle Gemini's spirit, while those who embrace their spontaneity will thrive in their company. Gemini doesn't like feeling trapped in routines or overly serious dynamics. They want a partner who can grow with them, adapt with them, and keep the conversation going. Playfulness and variety. There's a childlike quality to Gemini, not in the sense of immaturity, but in their love of discovery. They bring a playful, youthful energy into relationships and enjoy keeping things light, fresh, and full of new experiences. If the emotional foundation is strong, this playfulness can make Gemini a joyful and loyal partner. But if the relationship becomes stale or emotionally unbalanced, Gemini may detach or seek stimulation elsewhere. Gemini thrives in environments where they can learn, communicate, and problem solve. They are not built for repetitive tasks or static roles. They need jobs that offer mental engagement and diversity of experience. The communicator at work. Gemini makes an excellent writer, teacher, journalist, translator, or marketer. Any career that allows them to use language, analyze ideas, or engage with the public. They are also drawn to technology, social media, travel, and broadcasting. Their ability to multitask and synthesize information quickly makes them valuable in fast-paced, dynamic fields. Geminis are often at the cutting edge of ideas. They catch trends before others see them and can articulate visions that feel just out of reach. But they may struggle with follow-through or consistency. Without enough stimulation, they can become bored, distracted, or flaky. Gemini needs a career path that allows them to wear many hats and follow their curiosity. Teamwork and independence. Geminis usually work well with others, especially when communication is key. They enjoy collaborative brainstorming and can bring creative solutions to any team. But they also need a degree of autonomy. Micromanaging a Gemini is a recipe for burnout. Give them room to experiment, and they will surprise you with their innovation and adaptability. Challenge and growth. Gemini's biggest challenge in the workplace is staying grounded. Because their mind is so agile, they may jump from project to project without finishing what they start. Learning to focus, prioritize, and build structure around their talents is essential for long-term success. The symbol of Gemini is the twins, most often associated with the myth of Castor and Pollux in Greek mythology. Two brothers, one mortal and one immortal, who were so close that after one died, the other begged to share his immortality. The gods placed them together in the stars as the constellation Gemini, a symbol of duality, brotherhood, and shared consciousness. This myth reflects Gemini's split nature, the human and divine, the thinker and the dreamer, the observer and the participant. It shows the pain and beauty of being two things at once, of trying to reconcile opposites within oneself. Gemini rules the arms, shoulders, hands, and lungs, the parts of the body involved in connection, communication, and breath. These areas are where Gemini processes the external world, symbolizing their role as the bridge between thought and action, inner and outer worlds. When stressed, Geminis may experience nervous tension, shallow breathing, or issues related to anxiety. Gemini's evolutionary journey is about learning to move from information to wisdom. At a basic level, Gemini collects data, ideas, words, and experiences. But as they mature, they must learn to discern meaning, to see patterns, to understand context, to slow down and integrate what they know. For Gemini, growth comes through deep listening, to others, and to their own inner voices. It comes from learning to sit with contradiction, not just describe it. From turning curiosity inward, toward self-reflection. And from learning that sometimes the truth isn't in what's said, but in what's felt between the lines. As Gemini evolves, they become the wise messenger, not just passing information along, but shaping it into something transformative. They move from chatter to communication, from questions to insight, from restlessness to resonance. The evolutionary path of Gemini is one of deepening focus and finding consistency in their restless curiosity. Initially, Gemini's energy is scattered, driven by an insatiable need for knowledge and constant change. Their challenge is learning to channel their mental agility into more sustained endeavors, rather than being distracted by every new idea or project that comes their way. Over time, Gemini learns the value of depth over breadth, finding fulfillment in forming deeper connections and dedicating themselves to pursuits that require commitment and discipline. Their evolution is about embracing their multifaceted nature while also grounding their communication and learning to listen as much as they speak.